Hello and welcome back to Part-Time Bodybuilder. This is your host, Holly Jeans. I've got another returning guest on, which I'm super excited about. So we've got the lovely Jenny Hamilton back on.
Hello.
And we are both 2 weeks out. It is 2 weeks, isn't it? Or just under 2 weeks now.
Yeah, 12 days,
12
isn't it?
days, yeah. Out from the Two Bros Protan Naturals Cup, which is on the 19th of September. I'm testing my prep brain here. Now, now, me and Jenny talk a lot, and she has been amazing during this prep. She has been super supportive, and I've been very lucky to have her to kind of bounce back and forth with. And we tend to send each other mammoth voice notes, which are basically a mini podcast in themselves. And we actually end up normally talking about really interesting topics. So I'm really excited to have her back on today because we actually need to record some of these conversations that we end up having.
Yeah, we have some nuggets in there, and I'm like, oh, that was good.
Yeah, even with our prep brain. So we've got some kind of topics lined up that we wanted to talk about today, which we'll just get into in a second. But I think we should probably start with how we're feeling, like 12 days out. So Jenny is looking very fresh. I'm a bit jealous.
I'm definitely not. Like, I feel like it's because I'm in a dark room and I've got my hair up. But honestly, I've not washed my hair in like a week. I'm just sitting here in a little room that's really hot. I'm drinking a green tea and I'm feeling a bit like, oh. But I have just had a 2-day refeed, so possibly why. But yeah, it's before that refeed, major prep feels. I've been pushing hard, which is one of the things that we'll get into, I guess. But yeah, it's been a preppy prep.
Preppy prep. And actually, yeah, we've probably had some similar struggles. I always kind of come to life though in the past, like in the weeks where it's just pre-show, because it feels like that final push. It almost feels a little bit easier to push that bit harder.
You start to get excited, don't you? Like, I don't know about you, but when your brain starts to think about, okay, I've got this appointment, then I've got this appointment. I know that, like, for example, when I was in the gym on Saturday and I was absolutely dying, and everyone I spoke to, I was like, this is my 4th last leg session. And you start like counting down the things like that, because I'm like, this is like, if you see me looking like I'm about to cry, that's why. It's because I'm pushing.
Yeah, I'm almost like, right, okay, X amount of cardio sessions until peak week. And then I'll go in and like one of my leg days is like a real struggle. And I did it the other day and I was like, this is the last time you've got to do this leg session before show. And it's just those little mental battles that it's like, right, okay.
Like, made it.
Yeah, definitely. So we can dive right into there, like in terms of, I've got the noisiest dog ever. So she's decided to have a drink and then she was like panting next to me. So hopefully she chills out in a minute. But in terms of like, we've both said we've had to push quite hard. So it'd be really interesting to kind of hear in terms of like what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah. So just for anyone who doesn't know me, I am 5'2.5". That half matters because it means I'm class C and not class B. However, I have competed in both because it depends who measures me, where I end up. So I'm a lot shorter than Holly, and like I'm little. And just in general, I would say that I hold muscle and build muscle fairly well for a female, but my body does not like to be lean at all. So for example, like I do have to push really hard, and like from about 7 or 8 weeks out on pretty much every prep I've done, I've like lost my menstrual cycle. Like my body just does not want, it's not healthy for me to get even kind of lean, really. Like my body just doesn't want to do it. So at the moment we're 2 weeks out and I haven't calculated my calories at all, but on a rest day, apart from a whole egg and egg whites at breakfast, I'm pretty much just eating fish and veg times 5. And on our training day, it's just been reduced as well. I'm having some pre-workout oats, some post-workout cream of rice, fairly small quantities of both, the same old egg, one whole egg and egg whites at breakfast, and then again just like fish and veg or chicken and veg. So it's pretty low, and I do an hour of cardio every day on the treadmill with an additional 30 minutes on the stairs on a rest day. So it's quite a lot. And obviously I do have some refeeds and things in there. I've just had, like I said, 2 days of a moderate refeed with rest from cardio, and then we're pushing again. But yeah, that is my current situation.
Out of interest, what were the reasons for the refeed? And also, do you have a step count? Do you calculate
yeah,
that as well?
Steps. So steps are also 15,000 both days, not including the cardio. So yeah, and then the refeed I had was literally, I have been pushing hard. Like I hadn't had a refeed I had a refeed, but basically I told you about this and sent you a meltdown. I stressed myself out to the point where basically my refeed did not digest, and I looked about 6 months pregnant, and this was like 2 weeks ago. So then we just got back on it, pushed hard, that all settled. But when you are doing so much cardio and so little food, like, you get flat, and then also you just get to the point where you have no energy. My gym sessions were suffering. My strength, when my strength starts to go, my power starts to just like decline in all my sessions. That's kind of like a reason that we have like a little top up. And I'm not like, it's never a massive cheap meal. It's never loads and loads of food, really. Like it's just very moderate, like a few extra rice cakes at each meal kind of thing, or a small bowl of oats. It's very moderate, and then just resting up so that we have the energy to push again.
Yeah, it's that thing that you can't push, can you, from empty? So sometimes it's just about topping the tank up, ready to go again. And like you say, it's probably some extra rice here, or it's not like an off-plan meal. It is very structured, and
and it's just the thing of like, it's not a dieting competition. Like it's not just about throwing you into the ground, and if at some point your muscle fullness is looking really bad, like I don't want to end up on stage super stringy, or like, I mean, I am quite short anyway, so that's not as, like, for someone like you, I can imagine trying to get that balance of fullness is so much harder because you have longer muscles to fill out. But yeah, it's just a balancing act, isn't it, about making sure you look your best, but you're not holding back from pushing hard.
And like you say, it's not a dieting competition. It's not who can get the leanest, because to be fair, I could push myself and get really lean and lose all my muscle mass, and well, like you say, get really stringy and really flat. But actually retaining that muscle and actually looking decent on stage it's a really hard balance.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it is difficult with yourself to, like, that's why we have coaches. I would never look at myself and be like, oh, I need to back off now. Like, you always just think push harder. And mentally, I think that's part I struggle with, is okay, being like, yeah, okay, I need to relax now, and then feeling like, oh my god, am I doing enough because I'm not pushing? And it's a mental battle, really is.
Yeah, we had a chat recently because we were both having a bit of a wobble about not being lean enough, and I know we were both pushing really hard. I was at the point where I was literally crying on my way to cardio because I felt so exhausted. And as everyone knows who's listened, I've got a foot injury, and every step was painful. And I just got to the point where I was like, this is just hard. And I would have kept going. I didn't feel lean enough. I was like, Kiva, we need to push harder. We need to push harder. Like, I'm not lean enough. I was getting really stressed. And then you know that stress is not good for your physique. So then you're stressed about being stressed. Yeah. And we got to the point where he was like, my weight was going up. And he was like, right, we need to rest here, like take a couple of days off. And when you're in that mindset, like you say, you just want to push harder because you think, I haven't got time to back off. I'm not lean enough. Like, I can't
Yeah.
sit on my bum for 2 days. But actually, my weight has dropped like mad since then. So I just needed to take that step back, recharge, de-stress,
Forwards.
and then push forwards again.
Yeah, I mean, at a very similar time, I hurt my lower back, which, like, if you've ever done anything in the gym, like, your back just feeds into everything.
Yeah.
And it was awful. Like, I had to take 4 days off cardio when I didn't need to. I then, like, was every time I went to train legs, it would flare up again. I would be like in tears in the gym. And like it then got to the point where, like, right, we need to change my sessions because I can't get in a leg press without hurting myself. I can't do an RDL. Like, I can't even do it with like 40 kilos, let alone my work weight, which was way more than that. So we had to totally change my training. Which was mentally difficult as well, because when you're used to doing like balls to the wall sets on the leg press, like things like that, and I did that all the way through my last prep, I'm now like leg presses out and I'm doing a couple, like 2 sets of leg extensions for my quad work, and then that's it. And then there'll be like some cable kickbacks and more abduction sets and lots of seated ham curls and stuff, and you just, in your head, it's so difficult to not be like, oh, like cause yourself more stress, which is what I was doing for a long time. But we've kind of got over it. We've made it work. And although it's still not perfect, I'm able to train now. And I mean, at this point, prep, you're not going to be building new muscle or getting stronger anyway. So
it's a case of retention, particularly
yeah,
as we've mentioned, we're doing a natural show. It is the likelihood of us building any muscle or getting stronger is pretty much slim. I mean, I've not regressed, but I've reset most of my lifts now, like particularly my compound lifts. And it's a case of keeping the rep range, keeping the intensity in the sessions, but maybe not having as much weight on, because actually I can lift that weight, but I'm probably not doing much in terms of retaining that muscle if I'm literally just shifting the weight.
Yeah, exactly. No, so it's hard that there's so many different mental aspects of prep. And I always feel like prep is such a complex time, because when you start at where you start at, say, 20 weeks out, like I think we both did start at 20 weeks, didn't we? And then where you are by 10 weeks is somewhere totally different, with all sorts of different problems to overcome, like, because 10 weeks is a long period of time. And then to double that for your entire prep, all sorts of things pop up. Like, it's never going to be fully smooth sailing, like it just isn't. And so you go on this like emotional roller coaster of feeling good, then feeling stressed because you're not going to be ready, then feeling stressed because you're exhausted. Like, it's just stress.
Stress. We do enjoy this, we promise. We do enjoy this. This isn't a moaning session. This is just realities of where we are and what's happened. I mean, just for context, because we were going to talk about in terms of how hard people actually have to push. So I'll just cover where I'm at.
Yeah.
I have been doing 45 minutes cardio on the Stairmaster fasted for, I don't know how long, weeks and weeks and weeks. Again, steps have been at 15,000 for, I don't think we've touched that for weeks. 8,000 of those are weighted with a weighted vest on. That's just been upped by 2,000 steps today. So I'm going to hit 17,000 steps today. And what else have we doing? So food is still relatively good on a training day. I think I'm at around 1,700.
It's good, but you're tall.
I'm nearly 6 foot, so I'm basically, I'm quite a big woman. Not in terms of width, I'm very like slender, but I am very tall. But on a rest day, I am hovering around the 1,000 calorie mark. And the reality is that you just have to do what you've got to do sometimes. Actually, my body tends to like being lean. When I'm not stressed, my body will drop relatively well. So I was saying to Jenny beforehand, in the last 2 weeks after that little stint of going up and getting really stressed, I've actually dropped 4 kilos in 2 weeks, which is a lot. But when my body is happy, when I'm not stressed, when I'm sleeping well, when I'm recovering, I mean, I'm getting 8 hours of sleep a night, and I'm kind of I'm doing pretty well. My body doesn't naturally, I sit quite lean. Actually, in off season, pushing is quite uncomfortable for me. My sleep suffers, my recovery suffers, my energy suffers.
See, that's where we're opposite. Like in off season, I sleep like a baby. My body loves any extra body fat you want to throw at it. I have to really, like, I did not manage my reverse well last time, whole other topic, but and for that I ended up like I just couldn't sit lean in my off season. Really, I have had off seasons where I've sat leaner for sure, but it took a lot of like very strict reverse dieting, really slow building of calories and stuff. And so like I always think it's interesting us in being opposites of what our bodies like to do, yet we both have the same issue sometimes of like the weight's not moving, but we're struggling to get that progression and leanness and stuff. So
yeah, I actually went and saw Cuba in person the other week, and he was kind of saying to me that I sit on this real line where we have to push me, obviously, to lose body fat, but it's almost not tipping it over to the point of fatigue, because as soon as I fall off the ledge, I just stall. So it's a really fine line with me between pushing hard enough, but not pushing too hard that I break myself and we end up losing time. Because actually I'm not very good at recognizing the signs of my fatigue, or it's almost like with me that I will go and go and go, and then there's not like a obvious sign for me that okay, I'm feeling a bit fatigued now. It's like that. It's like almost I get hit by a train and I'm like, no, I'm done. So credit to him. I've been checking in daily with him now for weeks, because we've just had to keep really on top of things. So
that's a good thing. Like obviously I'm coached by my partner, so he is with me all the time, and so if I have like a bad gym session, like he knows about it instantly, and we can always like nip it in the bud. But then it comes back to again like that same thing of I feel like people are scared to be tired and fatigued in prep sometimes, because they kind of buy into this. Like I see it all the time on my socials about rest and recovery, and I'm like, yeah, absolutely, like it matters so much. But in a prep, you are going to be exhausted. You are not going to recover well. You are not going to have strong sessions. Your sleep's not going to be the best sometimes. Like, and that's prep, and it's uncomfortable and it sucks. But and yeah, you need to manage those things. But if you're never tired and you're never pushing hard through those times, you're probably not going to end up lean enough. Obviously it's different for everyone, but especially speaking from like a natural person who struggles to lose body fat, the only options I have to get leaner are do more, eat less. In that end stage, like obviously rest and recovery needs to happen, but if I'm not lean enough, tough.
That's the thing, isn't it? Like you have to push as hard as you have to push. And for me, like I sent Cuba a message yesterday, and I was like, because I do an update every day and I just tell him how I'm feeling and stuff, and I was like, I had a bad session yesterday. Strength was like through the floor in my push session. I was like, woke up at 1 a.m. hungry. And what else did I say? My legs felt a bit battered during cardio yesterday. Like I'm getting some niggles in my legs now. And then at the end of it, I was like, sorry, that sounds like I'm moaning. I'm not. That I actually feel pretty good, but I'm just like being honest, because I really struggle with, like you say, I go into a prep thinking this is going to get hard. I'm going to be tired. That's part of the process. So it's almost like detaching myself and going, am I too tired now? Which is a really hard thing to do. So he was like, no, that's the feedback that I need from you. Like, you need to be telling me them things.
Yeah, that was another big reason, is like I'm not good at communicating that at all. I'm fine person, and I'm quite often not fine, which is why having Nikki as a coach has been a game changer this year for me, because he's not afraid to tell me when to suck it up and stop whining, and he's also he's also not afraid to tell me to like, no, like you need to back off now, like we need to refeed. And if I start like pulling and humming and hawing at things, he will take on board what I say, but he'll also be like, no, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Which is, it's just so useful to have somebody who's there and can see it happening, can see me being tired and grumpy. And I'm saying, I'm fine. He's like, you're not, you're cranky. Like, you're obviously exhausted.
Do you know what? That's one thing that I've noticed this prep, which has almost been a light bulb moment, is I'm a very level person mood-wise, even like with monthly cycles and stuff like that. I'm not emotional. I'm not erratic at all. I'm very level. When I get to the point of exhaustion, I am very emotional. So actually now I'm kind of like, if I'm crying, I'm tired. Like there's something wrong here.
See, I'm emotional anyway, but I get so emotional when I'm like pushing hard. Like the other day, there was about a 15-second advert about like some sort of dog adoption thing, and I burst into tears. It was a YouTube advert, and Nikki was just sat looking at me like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "That was just made me so emotional."
And
Oh God.
really little things irritate me. So this was just before he was like rest. I was on the Stairmaster and there was a woman doing kickbacks next to me. And I voice noted Sharon. I was like, after cardio, obviously not while I was stood on next to this woman, sounding really passive aggressive. I was like, I wanted to punch her. I actually wanted to push her off the Stairmaster and be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why is that irritated me so much?
I know. I feel you. You just, emotions are everywhere. You become very inward looking on yourself, and then sometimes it just, so other people do things that tick you off and you're like, normally that wouldn't bother me, but today I do want to murder you.
Yeah. Don't test me today.
Yeah.
Something we said about beforehand as well is obviously we've both said we're having to push quite hard. Something I've seen on Instagram a lot is if you have an effective off season, you don't need to push too hard. Now I know you've had an effective off season and I've had an effective off season, so we've both kind of said that that's not always the reality.
Yeah, like, does an effective off season help your prep? Like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like, your body's like, it doesn't matter how much you prime it, if your body doesn't like to be lean, which 99% of bodies are not going to want to be stage, and it's stage lean. It's not like lifestyle lean, it's unhealthily
Extremes.
levels of body fat lean. Most people's bodies are not going to want to do that. And so yeah, having an effective off season and building your calories up so you've got more to pull from is fab. But for me, I'm 5'2", I'm weighing all like just above the 50 kilo mark. And so the amount of calories it takes for me to be in a deficit right now is not very many. So like, it's just, it is what it is. Like, it's just that simple. And I've had off seasons where I've pushed my body weight up really far, and ones where I've, like the last prep I started, I did a 21-week prep because of COVID. I only dropped 7 kilos, no, not even 6 kilos in 21 weeks because I stayed fairly lean through my off season.
Yeah.
But I still was doing over an hour of cardio at the end, still doing less than 1,000 calories at the end. But I'm like, that's just what it took.
Yeah.
And I
And I
just
mean,
accept it now.
I started prep on no cardio. My steps were 8,000 steps in off season, and I built my calories up to about 5,000 on a training day. Now, my body can handle a lot of food. I can eat But like I say, I am very tall, so my calories compared to someone else's probably seem ridiculous. But actually, towards the end, maybe, yeah, it got uncomfortable. I would say I probably put on a bit too much body fat for me this off season, because actually
I put my hand up and say the same
my
for myself.
body naturally, but this is something me and Cuba have learned, is that my body is much more responsive and is much happier, leaner. So
Yeah.
yes, we need the calories. Yes, we needed to put on the weight, and yes, I'm going to look better on stage because I have built more muscle. But do we need to push it that far next time? Probably not. But it's a learning process. Coach needs to learn your body. You need to learn your body. You need to try things out.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and I mean, in my off season, I was having 3,500 calories a day. I was doing no cardio. I think I was doing 10K steps. And by 7 weeks out, I was doing an hour of cardio every morning. Because that's just what it took. And I like, we've just had this discussion as well of get people who make comments who say, oh, should you be doing that much this far out? Or are you sure you're doing everything you can be in other places? Like, and especially for me, like I am very bro with it. Like I don't use sugar-free sauces and sweeteners. One, they upset my digestion and I just don't like to add anything extra. I've used the same seasonings for pretty much the whole prep. I weigh my veg. I track my water. I have the same amount of coffees. Like literally, I try and be as robotic with everything as possible. And I still have to do that. And so when people start making those comments, assuming that because you're having to push hard, you're not doing everything you should. And especially when we're in those prep moods, like we've just talked about, it's really frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that, yeah, we've talked about it before, and I've kind of said the same. You need to be really careful who you listen to on prep, and
Yeah.
really figure out the people that matter and the people that know you. So I know that I can speak to you about this sort of stuff, and you'll know that I'm doing everything that I can. You're a very kind of level voice for me. Shah Hudson's another one, and Cuba ultimately. And I mean, he even said to me when my weight was going up, he's like, Holly, I know you're doing everything that I tell you to do. And so don't stress about it, because I have had comments also like, are you really doing everything that you can? You know, have a think about whether you're pushing yourself as hard as you need to be. And it's like, I am pushing myself to breaking point here. And like, for some people, that is the reality, that potentially, yeah, you could be pushing harder, but ultimately, you need to know whether you can. And I can hand on my heart say that I have done absolutely everything for 2 years in my off season and my prep. I couldn't have done any more.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's like I live and breathe this. And so it is that, and that makes it more frustrating though when things like scale weight stalls, when those bumps in the road do happen, when an injury pops up, because it's like when you're doing every single thing right, sometimes it is, you have to take that blind faith and be like, no, it's happening, something's working. The only thing you can ever do to mess up is backtrack yourself from progress by feeling sorry for yourself. So yeah, but it is frustrating. And I do think as well that sometimes people get a warped perception from social media, and when they see other people posting about what they're doing and how they can eat, and then they compare that to when they see me eating white fish and veg multiple times a day. Like I put up a full day of eating a good few weeks ago now, saying zero carb rest day. This is what I have. And I got so many messages, people like, oh my God, you actually meant zero carb. And I was like, well, that's why I called it a zero carb rest day. I was like, why is that shocked everybody? Why would you think that I would say, oh, I'm having a zero carb rest day, but oh, I also have a bowl of oats? Like, no, I like
It is zero, yeah.
zero. I was like, people have this, I think, perception of what hard is. And I mean, I guess a lot of people don't want to share it because I guess it's not healthy. It's not, but that the sport's not about health. And I think as long as you're clear about that and up to your audience who you're sharing it with, like for example, I'm a coach and not one of my clients has ever done what I'm doing now. I have prep girls for next year, and they will all be like talked through this process beforehand. But yeah,
And your version of hard, my version of hard, and maybe some of your clients' versions of hard are all different as well.
definitely, yeah, exactly. People have different places they can push to, and especially for like if you're a first time competitor and listening to this and you're going, oh my goodness, like I do not want that to be me. Like I am not the advocate for like an easy prep. But I know that about my body, and it's always been this way, and I still come back and I do it again. Like this is my third prep, so
There's levels of commitment as well,
yeah,
because I would say I threw myself into my first prep, but did I push myself as hard as I do now? Probably not. I care about it an awful lot more now, and I'm a lot more invested 3 preps in than I was in my first prep. So just like you said, if you're listening to this and thinking, oh my God, like, is this what I'm in for? Like,
I just wanted to try it and have fun. Like, yeah, try
yeah,
it and have fun.
there's
But
nothing wrong with that. Like, you
yeah,
can't tell if you love something if you've never
never
done
done it.
it. And there's also no harm in doing it for a challenge but never wanting to do it again.
Yeah,
That's
I
entirely
can see why
fine.
people do it once and not again.
Yeah.
Like, it is one of those things that I say, like, again, I've got a few first timers, and I say to them, like, it's going to be the hardest thing you ever do. And like, they're all trying to plan their first seasons. And I'm like, look, don't get fixated on winning, and don't get fixated on a certain federation or show because of where you want to be in 2 years, because you might do a prep and hate it. So fixate on what's going to give you a fun show day. Fixate on a show that's close to home so that you're not having to spend loads of money to travel. Like, do those for your first season, do a couple of shows, and if you enjoy it, then think about the long-term game. Because for my first show, I did a tiny federation. There was 3 bikini girls in the whole show. It was very chilled. It didn't cost me a lot to enter, and it gave me a taste for it, and I decided I want to do it. And then I just went into a year-long off season to become competitive. Like, it was never, I obviously went into that show wanting to do well, but that that was my kind of experiment to myself. Like, do I really want to do this before I spend all that money on bikinis and all the rest of it?
And actually, I found the most fun part of my first prep was not knowing everything, figuring it out along the way. Like, when I started in 2018, there was nowhere near as much information out there. It was nowhere near as popular. Like,
No.
Jasmine hadn't even started Compact yet. I can remember listening to Not Just a Bikini Girl on the Stairmaster, thinking, what the hell am I doing? I knew no one else that competed. Like, I literally threw myself into this world I knew nothing about. And the
Yeah.
fun and the joy from it was figuring it out along the way, and just that buzz of like, oh, I don't know what's coming next. Like, is my cardio
Yeah.
going to go up? Is like, everything was exciting.
I know. I was the same. Like, I didn't even take check-in pictures for my first prep because I didn't have a coach. And when I did take check-in pictures, it was me and Nikki stood in like our living rooms at home, and I was doing most musculars and front double biceps because I didn't know how to pose like a bikini girl. Like, it's like,
I
that's
checked
just,
in shorts and a sports bra for the whole of my first prep until like I
yeah.
had my bikini like 2 weeks out.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Like, you just, but that's, I think at the same time, like, you see first timers these days, and I'm like, oh my God, my
You
first
look better
time.
than I do now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I'm
oh,
like, what? Yeah, I know. I'm like, my first time was not like that, but I'm so glad it wasn't. It was so much fun. And I learned so much along the way that it just prepared me so much for the rest of it.
yeah, definitely. Something else we've kind of touched on it already, but kind of not, is that kind of like comparison thing. And something we've spoken around is, obviously we've said we're doing a natural show. I think I'm going to caveat this. I'm not saying that people who are assisted don't have to work bloody hard, because they do. The clue's in the title, it's assistance. It's not, you don't take something and you've built all this muscle and you have a really easy prep, because that's just not how it works. But women being assisted is still very much a taboo topic, which I, again, completely understand.
Yeah.
But because it's very cloak and daggers. And I really struggle with, like, I'll see progress pictures go up and it's like, here's my like 1 year transformation. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I've been doing this 3 years and I haven't made that much progress. Or someone's, again, like, I'm eating X amount of calories and I'm doing 10 minutes of cardio on this prep. Now, I'm not as naive as I was. I didn't realize how many people would be assisted in the sport. It still surprises me now when I talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, I'm assisted. But now I know people and I speak to people, I kind of can be a bit more objective, but I do really struggle sometimes with that kind of doubt thing of, I haven't made enough progress, or, you know, am I pushing myself hard enough? I don't know if you feel that.
I definitely get that. And I think it's different as well. Like, it's just such a minefield. And I, like you say, I get why it's a taboo subject, and just, it's not, you would never want young females to look up at the sport and think that the only option is to go that way. And also there's so much other questions and other things, like that's just a whole other subject in itself. So I understand why people aren't necessarily open about it on social media and things, because I think that would be a disaster in itself. But at the same time, yeah, it's difficult. And when I first got into this, I had no idea I thought you'd be able to spot it a mile away. And then I went through a point of assuming that, like, all right, okay, so maybe then is this something that I need to be doing? Is it like, and it was just so overwhelming. And I think it is just it's just so difficult to, and like, there's all sorts of levels to it. Like, for example, I always used to think that it was just, if you went on assistance, that it would somehow make you grow loads of muscle. But like, there's assistance for fat loss, there's assistance for, muscle building. Like, there's different pathways you
Thyroid
go.
function. There's
Yeah,
so much. Yeah.
exactly. And it's overwhelming. I do not know about it
No.
enough to make any kind of judgment on it at all. And like you said, I still like look up to, and I put myself against, like, this is the first time I've ever done a naturals show. And when we do the Arnold's, it's not a natural show. Like, I have no problem putting myself against people who choose to do that. Like, if I did, I would go into a natural federation, but I'm not. For me, bikini, the look is achievable naturally, I think, for myself. But yeah, it does become difficult when, yes, someone might only be doing 10 minutes of cardio and eating a lot of food, but if you're also taking fat burners, that mean you have to do less cardio, which is a good play, because then you've got more chance of retaining your muscle if you're taking a fat burner, and having to do less cardio. Then you're probably gonna have better gym sessions. So like, if you go down that route, then that's great. But when you compare yourself as a natural athlete and you're having to eat less and less and less and do more and more and more, sometimes it's difficult to differentiate, and also to not feel like, oh, maybe I should have done that.
Yeah. I think for me, there's been a realization this prep of just how many people are, and this isn't me, like, we're not here to say what's good, bad, what people should and shouldn't do, because I just don't have the knowledge. I haven't done the research. I've always kind of been the same as you, in the fact that I know I'm putting myself up against assisted athletes. That's something I have to accept. Do I want to do it? Probably not. So I have to accept that. Is me turning pro likely, for example, without assistance? I'm not sure, because of my genetics, my frame. This is something else we've spoken about. I'm 6 foot. I struggle to build muscle. I don't know. I mean, it's really hard, because in the last year, I have built a lot of muscle and I've learned how to train properly. I've pushed my food. So maybe it is attainable, but But then also at the same breath, I could go assisted, and again, there's no guarantees that I will ever reach that potential. So
exactly. And like for me, I'd love to turn pro, and I'd love to do it naturally. And obviously so far that is what I am trying to do. But especially like we've talked about this, like we said, there's different pathways of assistance. And for me, it's not about the muscle building side of things, but if I was able to use a pathway that enabled me to eat that little bit more or do that bit less cardio, not from laziness, but from like a longevity point of view, in terms of if you were to turn pro, like your pro season, if you want to be a good pro bikini athlete, a lot of those pros compete a lot of the year.
yeah,
And whether I could, and like, for example, I know, for example, that Ashley Cowswater, she has her period every month. Like she can compete again and again and again and not miss a period, sit super lean. Like that's where her body likes to be. And I will never be that. I will never be someone who can have a functioning menstrual cycle and be in good enough health while also having glute ham tie-in. Like I, and so that's where would having that pathway make that possible? Maybe, or maybe it wouldn't.
maybe
But I
not.
wouldn't know until I tried it. And it's just, like I said, I don't know. Don't know enough about it. I would never lie and say I've not considered it, because I have. But I've never, apart from just in my moments of, oh, maybe I need to do it. But there's always been a part of me that feels like, okay, I don't feel like I need it just yet. And so let's see if we can do it without.
I think for me, it's always been a toss up between is risk versus reward, right? So
Yeah.
do I want to deal with potentially lifelong side effects for something that I might not achieve?
Yeah.
That's kind of what
Exactly.
you're looking at, isn't it? And
Yeah.
for me, if I was going to do it, I'd want to go in with my eyes fully open. I'd want to have done my research. I'd want to know the ins and outs of duck's backside, because that's just me. If I'm going to do something, I'm accepting the risks of what I'm doing and fully understanding it. Because although I'd look to a coach for guidance and support and their knowledge, it's not a case of someone saying to me, jump, and me saying how high, because that's just not how I work. It's not how my brain works.
I'm exactly the same. I would want to know what I was getting into. I'd want to know the science behind it. And like it's just something I've never fully researched.
Yeah.
I've definitely learned more about it in the last year. Just like through you say, like I am interested to follow people's journeys, and like I have been on like forum, like the Train by JP forum, and I've kind of had a browse on like the Physique Collective and things. It's just a lot of information to take in, and sometimes I find it quite overwhelming. And it's just difficult because there's no way of telling who is and who isn't. There'll always be the people who say they are when they're not. There'll always be people who look like they are. Like I get accused of it all the time. I put up a comparison picture this morning of, and I even put in the caption Natty Gains, and within half an hour someone had commented something about Anavar on it. And I was like, and I get that every year. And I get people asking me in the gym, like, all right, so are you
I've
natural?
never had anyone assume that I'm assisted.
Oh God. But it's hard because people like question me. Like people are like, yeah, but what about previously? And I'm like, well, no, that would still make me not natural. Like, no, like,
But then
and then
again,
it makes you really awkward because I'm like, it's like do you not believe me? It's like the people that are that work at the gym that see me literally in there about 5 hours a day on the treadmill for like hours, and then in the gym training for like 3 hours, are like, yeah, okay, I see why. But like it's difficult, and you're never sure whether to take it as a compliment or not either. You're like, thanks.
I think it is a compliment. We're going to take it as a compliment.
Take it as a compliment.
But yeah, and I can fully understand why, like we said before, if someone was and they didn't want to say, because like explaining that to your family and your friends and I can completely understand why you wouldn't even want to go there, because explaining it to someone is so hard when it's such a taboo subject.
Yeah. And I have nothing, like, I have great friends that are, and like it's some, like, I would never be against anyone doing it, and I like, it's not the make or break of progress,
No.
because I also know of people who have taken assistance and don't look that great because they aren't nailing their diet and they're not training that
Yeah,
hard.
like we
And
say, it is the clues in the
yeah,
title. It's assistance. It's
it's
not
the
going to do the
cherry
work
on
for
top.
you.
It's not the cake.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? Have I done absolutely everything? For me, have I done absolutely everything that I can naturally? It's really hard, because each year I get better and I think, well, actually, I have done that naturally. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Over time it's going to accumulate. And I think a big thing that's also like not spoken about enough is that like it is ultimately a game of genetics, um which, if you're not happy being like, a lot of people do not like to be beaten by someone who is just like, has that look. Like, you see it all the time in like bodybuilding, um in male bodybuilding, and there's some guys who are just built to be these big round bursting
yeah,
floor freaks. It happens in every category. Like, look at wellness. Like, there's a reason that like 90% of wellness competitors are Brazilian, and it's because they're genetically, like, what's it called, deep
predisposition. I can't
predisposed.
get my words out, but yeah, that
Yeah,
one.
genetically yeah, that one. They are made for big legs and little waist, and as not a big enough body. Like, that is built for them. Like, they are made to look like that. And it's a case of like, I hold muscle in certain places of my body. And I always use the example of my mom. Like, my muscle came from my mom. I trained her for like 12 weeks at the beginning of lockdown, and got her on a diet plan. And within like the 12 weeks, she would like reach up things from the cupboard and she had like delts coming out and she had little quad separations at 60. And I was like, this is where it comes from.
Yeah,
You are why I build muscle, okay? And so it's just, and ultimately you could do everything, but it's a subjective sport. And if someone walks in with, like, in bikini, if someone walks in with a really good set of glutes and a teeny tiny waist and like bubbly muscle, that just pops, it's game over.
yeah.
Whether they're assisted, whether they've been dieting for 4 weeks, whether they've done a 6 month prep, like, if someone walks in who looks better than you, it's a subjective sport, and that's it.
And that's why you can't pin your enjoyment and your happiness on winning a trophy, because there's
Yeah,
absolutely
same
no
thing.
guarantees in this sport.
Yeah, and also, like, what one judging panel thinks looks good, another might not. Like, one judging panel might think we really are looking at shape. The next week, they might really look at condition. Like, you have to bring, and I always say this, like, you need to bring the package that you want to bring, compared to, and I always compare myself to the pros when I'm looking at it, like, not from a, oh my god, how far have I got to go, but I'm like seeing how they balance condition and fullness. And I'm just like, because there's a lot of things as well, people be like, oh, condition wins amateur shows. I'm like, yeah, but not necessarily in bikini.
No.
um,
But I
so
also really struggle with that pro comparison thing. And I actually don't do it because, again, structurally, if I
yeah,
was to compare myself to someone like Ashley or Issa, my body's not built the same way they
yeah,
are. I've got to look at what looks best on me and what I need to potentially look like to be the best.
yeah. It's like when Janet won the Olympia, I mean, you had this discussion, because like, comparably, like, I'll never look like Janet because
Yeah.
I don't have the long limbs and the long elongated flowness. I'm short. I've got short legs, I've got short arms. Nothing, I'm not tall and elegant in that manner. I have to look at like, even Issa and them are all still taller than me, but I have to look at those shorter pros and how their structure is and how the look that they bring, because that's what's going to suit me more. And if I had then, when Janet won, gone, okay, well, that's the look they're going for now. Now, what do I do? You end up in that really kind of weird bubble. And so you have to find your look and your physique and how it fits best for you and bring your best. And then just constantly be that evolving version of yourself. And it's another reason why I say, like, don't stress about feedback. Like, if you look at your stage pictures, a decent coach can tell you you're not lean enough, or you're too lean, or your legs are too small, or all that jazz.
I
Because
mean,
a lot of the time,
I can look at my own pictures and tell myself what I need to do. Like,
oh yeah,
I walked
same.
away from 2019. I didn't even ask for feedback because actually, I don't need that additional voice to tell me what's wrong, because I knew I'm not conditioned enough. I don't have enough muscle. I know that.
But it's also, yeah, it's also like sometimes feedback, like judges aren't coaches, and so they just literally give you the literal version. And I've actually had a conversation with one of the two girl judges who saw a post I did on this, and he was like, "That is an excellent post, and you hit the nail on the head." And he said that basically my post was saying that my feedback from both of my shows was to come in leaner. And I tried to chase that leanness in my glutes and hamstrings, but I didn't have enough muscle in my hamstrings and glutes
to get it
for
through.
it to show. And so what I did was I spent 4 weeks killing myself, stressed my body out to the max. I then looked stringy, watery, and even less defined on stage, to then get more feedback once again that said, come in leaner. Even though I was leaner, and I actually looked better the first time round when I didn't chase that leanness.
Yes.
And so it's like, you need to not take it literally. You need to take a step back. Okay, they've said leaner, it's because they want more definition in my legs. And if you've not got definition there because there's not enough muscle there, like I've seen girls putting up that saying, oh, my legs were too big for bikini, but it wasn't their legs were too big, it's that their legs weren't lean enough. And there's a difference between that, and obviously like a lot of that can be fixed with an off season and building muscle where it's needed to be built. So yeah, I think it's just so subjective and so evolving. And yeah, like what you said about not putting the worth of what you do on a placing is huge.
Yeah, and it's something I have to constantly remind myself of. The amount of times that which sounds really vain and it's not, it's just to keep my mind in a really good place, is comparing where I was last time to where I am now.
Oh my God, same.
Because it's the only thing that makes me go, okay, I'm happy with that. I'm proud of. And do you know what? The other day, I actually got emotional on the Stairmaster, which I sound really sad, but I wrote a post ready for like I'm so sad. This is what I do to keep myself entertained for 45 minutes. But I find that when I've got free time to think is when I get creative. So, and writing for me is like a creative outlet. So I started writing a post for like the night before show day.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, this is going to be my final transformation post from like last year to this year. And I like just did a comparison picture and I was like, fuck, I'm proud of that. Like,
yeah,
I don't ever say that to myself, but I am fucking proud of that. Like, that is, I literally couldn't have put any more into that.
I know. And that's the thing, is I'm the same. Like, I like those pictures I put up this morning, it was like I put up 3 weeks out from my first ever prep to 3 weeks out now. And I was like, I can't believe how much I've changed and how much bigger how much muscle I've grown and how much I've learned. And I feel like when you look at those pictures as an individual, you don't just see the physical change.
No.
You're like, you see the person that you were and the person you are now, and you're like, oh my God, if I could tell that person on the left that you would be the person on the right in a year or 2 years or 3 years, my mind would be blown. And it's like, it's just that. And like for me as well, oh God, I'm getting emotional, but But
You can
like,
tell we're both like close to show. We're both like,
yeah,
"Ah."
sorry guys. But for me, like yesterday, oh God, yesterday, Nikki, like we did this refeed and I was like looking better and better as the day goes on. And Nikki just turned to me and told me how proud of me he was. And I just like,
Oh,
it makes it like, it's so nice to have him as my coach anyway now. Like, it just to hear him say, because he is not some like he does not just throw compliments at
no.
me. Like there's been times when I do nightly posing in front of him where I hold my poses to like for endurance, and there's times where he's like barking at me like, drop your hands, I can see your wrists, and I'm like,
You're
oh.
like, "Ah."
And yeah, and he's not just standing there for like 5 minutes every night giving me compliments. And sometimes when I check in, I literally just get sent diet changes. Like, there you go. And I'm like, okay.
It means so much more when they do
Yeah,
actually say it. And actually, I think that it shows a lot of love and care when someone is able to be brutally honest with you, because they
yeah,
want you to be better. They want you to do better.
yeah, no, for sure. Like, it's it's one thing to be like encouraged all the time, and like it's great. And I feel like that's a big thing about social media is like people are so nice and so encouraging. And
Yeah.
like, for example, like that time in our prep when our weights weren't budging and I was like posting things out there and keep like people like, oh, you look fab, whereas like Nikki wasn't telling me that. Nikki was like, we need to keep up on your cardio, we need to keep dropping your food because we need to get a move on. Like, and he was like, I'm worried you're not gonna be ready. And I was like, oh. um
I do think you
so
have to take positive and negative both with a pinch of salt, because
yeah,
there'll be some
definitely.
people who tell you you look fabulous all the time, and there'll be some people who will tell you you look shit, whatever you look like. And it's
Yeah,
it's that's when you need to have them objective voices and just listen to them.
yeah, exactly. Which is when it's like, you have one coach, listen to that one coach. Don't let other people come into it and things like that. Like I've even had like clients and stuff who've been like, oh, my mom says I look ill, so I had some more food. And I'm like, oh my God, right, okay, that's like we're trying to diet for a show or a photo shoot. Like you're gonna have to look a bit crap. Like
Yeah, my mum absolutely hated my first prep. She kept looking at me and she was like, you look ill, you look painfully thin. And I
me
was like,
too. My mom was, when I first got into this, my mom was disgusted. She did not approve.
whereas
Which was,
now she's like, oh, you're looking really good. Like she reacted to my story the other day with flames, and I was like, oh my goodness, my mum's on board.
yeah, well, no,
Too
like
much
my,
on board. But
yeah, no, my mom is 100% on board. Like the first prep, she was not convinced, and then she came to watch the show, and I think she was like, "Oh my God, like I can't believe that's my daughter up on that stage." Like she looks, and I won it, and she was like, "Oh, okay, maybe she's all right at this." And then it wasn't until I did an off season, and she saw me build the food up, and
yeah,
she saw me eating Cocoa Pops and bagels and jam, and like being at a healthy body weight and eating all this food and really enjoying myself. And then I did it again. And then she saw me come down again, but this time I didn't look quite as ill because I had more muscle. And she'd be like, oh, okay. And then she came to that show as well. And she was like shaving the backs of my legs and all the sorts. Like she was so helpful. And then this year she was like, oh, I really want to come to your show again. And now she's like, I hurt my back and she's a physio. And normally, like, if that happened 2 years ago, she'd be like, no, you need to rest from the gym. You need to stop being silly. And she's like, I know you can't stop prep. So do this, do that. Like, she
amazing.
gets it. And then, like, that's a whole other conflict topic is that sometimes people aren't going to understand at first. And I think it takes time and it also takes, like, how you approach it. Like, I never tried to, like, force her to be interested in it.
No.
I just kind of allowed her to see the process and showed her the opportunities it could give me. And I think that really opened up things for her.
And the thing with me is, and I know you're the same, is that I love this so much that if no one come to my show, and I've done it, I've driven to shows on my own, I'm still doing it. I'm still getting up on that stage if there's no one in the audience. I did
Me
it in
too.
2019. So I think now they're kind of like, she's going to do it anyway.
I did it last year as well. Like I drove myself down from Scotland to London and stayed in a Premier Inn for 2 nights on my own and competed on my own. Nikki was working and my mum couldn't get time off, and I was like, it's not why I'm doing it. I want to prove to myself that I can come back better. And it's one of those things that when you love it as much as there'll be some people who don't get it, and there'll be some people who never get it, and don't understand, and that's fine too. But I think when it comes to family, like even just having that acceptance or like acknowledgement that okay, then that's not a phase,
Yeah.
and it's it's okay. Like it's not something. And that's the thing is, what my mom was like, oh, it can't be good for you at the start, and I was like, yeah, I know it's not good for me though. Like I'm
Yeah.
not trying to be the healthiest version of myself right now. I'm very aware that I'm starving, like, and emaciated. That is fully within, like I'm aware.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you say, they see the progression just not in terms of the physique, but the person. Like, I honestly believe, and I'm going to cringe at myself, that bodybuilding's taught me that I can do anything that I set my mind to. I
Yeah.
would not be quitting my full-time job, doing all this stuff. I wouldn't be hosting a podcast. I wouldn't do any of this if it wasn't for bodybuilding.
No, for sure. Like I believe that like I can go anywhere and do anything, and like it taught me so much. And I feel like when you're disciplined with your diet and you're disciplined with your training, that you can then be disciplined with your work. You can be disciplined with your sleep schedule. You can be disciplined with all other aspects of your life. And once you realize that, like, in fact, I was actually listening to a podcast earlier, and they were like, if you look in like a gym car park at like peak times, especially like looking at like a bodybuilding gym, there's a lot of nice cars parked in that car park, because a lot of those people who are in there disciplined every single evening or morning to get their training done are also disciplined in their work and have probably got good careers. He's like, obviously not everyone, but like it feeds into other areas of your life. Like when you start to realize that you can push yourself harder than you thought possible in the gym, it makes you think, okay, well, what else could I push myself at?
And there's always
And
another level.
yeah,
You
always.
push yourself, and then you go, just that little bit more, just that little bit
Well,
more, just that little bit more.
last year, I thought like this is the best prep. Like I have pushed myself so much, and I've pushed myself more this year because I've had harder challenges to overcome, or different challenges to overcome already.
Yeah,
And so it's like you level up without even seeking it
realizing.
out. Like you just want to keep going. And I mean, for some people, they might be like, that sounds awful. I don't want to always be uncomfortable. But like, if I'm ever sat feeling complacent, I'm like, right, if I'm feeling complacent, something's wrong.
I'm unhappy when I'm complacent.
Yeah. We talk about this, don't we? We're like, I always say about being stressed, but if I'm not stressed, I'm like, why am I not stressed?
I feel so unmotivated and
Yeah.
bored when I'm not challenging myself.
Yeah, for sure. Like, like you've just left your job, and I've been in job before where I'm like, like this doesn't make me feel good about myself to be living this life on repeat day in and day out. Like I want more than that.
It seeps. My friend calls it a poison well. She listens to this
Yeah.
podcast. I used to work with her. And it's this thing that if one area of your life is bad, so say my work, I'm not happy in, you start to pull everything else into the well. And it's what happens with me. I'm not happy at work. I feel unmotivated. That unmotivated feeling seeps into every area of my life.
Exactly. I'm the same. And it's like when I get myself into a funk, everything suffers. And so, especially, I do find that hard with prep though, as well. Like when prep, those times when prep's tough, and like when I hurt my back, especially like working for myself and being a coach and having to be there for other people, I do find that quite overwhelming sometimes when I'm like, I feel
Yeah.
not good in myself. So it comes with its perks and its challenges, I
Yeah.
guess, when you think like that. But it also means that you know that if you have the power to change that thing that's causing you that distress, that then everything else will probably start to fall back into line as well. And having that ability to kind of take charge of your life and be like, no, I refuse to sit here and feel sorry for myself, or I refuse to stay in this position. Like, it's what's the saying? Whatever you're not changing, you're choosing.
Yeah.
And so if you're not changing the thing that's making you unhappy, and if you can't change it, you need to change your perspective of it. But 9 times out of 10, you can change something to make that feel better.
Amazing. So true. So true. I kind of have a rule that I'll moan about something twice, and then after that, I'm choosing it. So either suck it up or change it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Final topic, because we've been going for absolutely ages, and I'm conscious you're going to train and I need to walk the dog and eat. Yep. So one last thing we wanted to touch on that I don't want to leave this without talking about was watching other shows while you're leading into your show day. So it's something we talked about beforehand. So we both were keeping tabs on the Graftism show at the weekend. Really interested, because I already kind of know your thoughts, but how does watching shows when you're so close to your own show make you feel?
So for me, so I was keeping tabs on the show, but I was actually trying not to. I was fighting it, because I know for me, even like 8 or 9 weeks out, sitting and watching a show just makes me stress about all the things I need to do before mine. And I find it gets worse the closer to show I get. Now, you see loads of people posting on social media like, oh, fire's so lit after seeing that show at the weekend. And in off season or the beginning of my prep, that is me. I see someone else on stage, I see people prepping, and I'm like, yes, I cannot wait. But as it gets closer to your time, your brain selfishly thinks of you, and not in terms of like, oh, is this person better than me or that person better than me? It's not that at all. It's that I start looking, okay, so they judged that class and someone more conditioned one, and then on the second class someone softer one, so what do they want? What do I need to do? And then I'm thinking like, oh, I like how she did her hair, should I do my hair like that instead? Or like, you start all these silly little stupid overthinking things that stress you out. And when you're sat pale, I was having a refeed, so I was watery, pale, watery, exhausted, in your living room watching all these tanned gorgeous humans step on stage having peaked to their physiques. Like, it's like, you can't compare yourself to that, but you do. And not from an individual basis, but more so from that feels so far away. Like, even if you're 2 or 1 weeks out, you feel so far away from that show day person that mentally I struggle with that. And I feel like it's something I've never seen anyone speak about, is that I find watching shows at the end of my prep makes my anxiety bad.
See, I'm a bit of both. So I find it really exciting. So I was at the point on Sunday night where I couldn't sleep because I was so excited to see like who would, and I think probably personally I had a lot of friends in that show, so I really wanted to see how well they had done, and I was just really excited for them. So I was so buzzed that I couldn't sleep, but at the same time, it's that pit of your stomach, you know, when you go on stage, that like almost like sicky, nervous feeling. I get that when I watch shows close to my own show, because like you say, it just feels so far away. You've got to remember that you're tired, your hormones all over the place. You know, like you say, my hair's straight back on the top of my head. I'm pale. I haven't got any carbs in me. I'm depleted.
Yeah.
It just feels so far away, and it is a bit of a mind game.
I will say as well that like the following day, I'm fine. Like, I go on my social media, I have a proper catch up. I go back to all the people's stories who I know I like kind of skipped through, or like people that like I want to see it. It's not that I don't want to see it. It's that when you're watching it as it unfolds, you feel that like that show day anticipation. I think like I just get nervous on show day. Like I'm not a hyper confident person, and so I almost, like you said, it's like you feel those show day nerves, but not for yourself. But then you think, okay, no, I do have to feel it for myself in like 2 weeks' time. And that's what I find really strange and overwhelming about it, because I can go on the following day and I'm fine. And it doesn't bother me. It's like as it unfolds, I don't know what it is. It's like the adrenaline gets to me. And it just seems all a bit like much.
Yeah, it's just a bit overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just an interesting one, because I was having a think about it when I was stressing out about it the other day, and I was like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it, and I'm like, am I going crazy, or is this a thing that people just don't speak about?
Yeah, I think it's probably just the thing that maybe we all do and haven't actually connected the dots.
I think it's hard to put it out there, because I think if you were to say it, people would be like, oh, so you're not happy, or
Yeah,
oh,
or you're so unsupportive, but that's
yeah,
not
and it's
that's
like
not
not
it.
like I again had lots of girls who I'm like friends with who competed and looked amazing, and I still go on and congratulated them, and like they did so well and they absolutely smashed it. And I'm not bitter, like I'm not the type of person that's like, oh, I don't like, I want us all to win. I
Yeah,
want us all
there's
to
room
succeed.
for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. Like that is not it at all. It's just that selfishly you start stressing about when it's your turn,
Yeah,
even though it's not your turn. And that's what, and so I think for that reason I would never attend a show in person a few weeks out.
no.
Like I think it would be more harm mentally for me than it would bring me motivation.
Yeah. And the other thing that they're long days, and I don't think I could cope with that on prep.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not.
Right, let's wrap this up here because we've spoken for
Yeah.
ages. So many good topics in there. And
Oh,
I'm just super, super excited now. 12 days to go.
I
Last
know.
push for both of us. And I honestly can't wait to spend show day with you. I still can't believe that we've not ever actually met in person.
No, because we were both at the compact meetup, but I don't think we ever actually spoke.
No.
So, which is, I know it always, because I like, you were one of the first girls I ever spoke to like on Instagram that was a competitor, and then I somehow never saw you at the meetup. I think I was just very shy. I just kind of kept myself to myself. But we've spoken all the time since then, and we've never actually met.
Yeah, and we're gonna be staying in an apartment together and sharing
Yeah,
show
I know.
day. It's gonna be
Just throw it
great.
at the deep end. If you find me annoying, this is going to be great.
Same. She's gonna have to help tan me, so we'll
I know
definitely
it's
be
fine.
friends by the end of that.
Yep, we sure will.
But I wish you luck anyway on show day, and yeah, I just can't wait.
Right back
So
at you. Yeah.
I will wrap this up here. I'll leave Jenny's details in the show notes so people can follow her and wish her luck, ready for show day. But thanks for tuning in, guys. Share it on your socials and tag us if you listen, because it's always great to see who's listening. And I will see you in the next episode.